Imagine it is March 2009. The financial system collapsed 6 months ago, and you are a middle manager at a manufacturing company in Cleveland, Ohio. The Dow has dropped 50%, and your 401k is cut in half. Then the crisis hits your floor. Your company announces a 20% workforce layoff. You survive the first cut, but there is a problem. You have $400 in your checking account, $2,000 in savings, and your mortgage payment is due in 3 weeks. Now imagine a different scenario. You are in the same chair, hearing the same announcement, but you have 8 months of living expenses in a high-yield savings account, untouched and available. One version of you spends the next 6 months terrified, taking whatever assignment is handed down to avoid an income gap. The other version thinks strategically, reaches out to contacts, and negotiates. Workplace confidence is rarely a personality trait. It is a byproduct of cash. Financial advice usually frames cash reserves as a defensive buffer, insurance for a car repair or a medical bill. This perspective is technically correct, but it misses the actual mechanism. Cash changes the decisions you make when things are going right. According to the Federal Reserve, 45% of American adults cannot cover a $400 expense with cash. When you look at longer-term stability, 30% of the country cannot cover 3 months of expenses at all. A $400 expense is not a catastrophe. It is a car repair or a broken appliance. These are normal occurrences. When nearly half the country cannot absorb a normal expense without borrowing money, something structural is happening. These numbers do not show the cognitive cost. They don't show the distortion in decision-making that happens when you know every single day that you are one small shock away from a financial crisis. In 2013, researchers from Princeton and Harvard studied farmers in India before and after their harvest. They found that the exact same individuals performed significantly worse on cognitive tests when cash was tight before the harvest. The researchers called this tunneling. When financially stressed, your mind focuses obsessively on the immediate bill. Strategic, long-term thinking disappears. This mental burden consumed the equivalent of 13 IQ points, an impairment similar to losing a full night of sleep. This is not a lack of discipline. It is a literal consumption of mental bandwidth. When you operate in survival mode, your mental architecture prioritizes the immediate over the strategic. People without cash reserves stay in jobs they should leave and accept salaries they should negotiate because they cannot afford the risk of a gap. Survival mode is expensive because it prevents you from making the choices that lead to growth. Consider 2 employees at the same company. One lives paycheck to paycheck with accumulating debt. The other has 8 months of expenses in a savings account. When asked to work unpaid overtime in a toxic environment, the employee without savings complies. They cannot afford to rock the boat or be seen as difficult, so they accept the conditions out of necessity. The employee with cash has options. They can push back on unreasonable requests or begin a job search without desperation. They can walk away because the alternative isn't unthinkable. In every transaction, from employment to rent, cash eliminates personal risk. Eliminating that risk gives you the leverage to negotiate better terms. When you have no margin, you have no leverage. You accept worse terms, which leaves you with even less margin. It is a self-reinforcing loop that keeps you trapped in a position of dependency. Over a decade, these small differences in leverage compound. The employee who can confidently ask for raises or switch to better opportunities builds a trajectory based on value rather than fear, leading to a massive disparity in lifetime earnings. This gap widens during macroeconomic crises. When markets crash and unemployment spikes, those without liquidity are often forced to sell off assets at the bottom just to survive. Historically, wealth transfers from the illiquid to the liquid. During the Great Depression and the 2008 crisis, those with cash bought distressed properties and stocks at historic lows, while those without liquidity lost everything. Cash is not just a defense, it is dry powder. It allows you to act offensively when opportunities emerge, whether that means buying a discounted asset or taking a calculated risk on a new career path. Identical talent in the same market will yield different outcomes, because liquidity determines which side of the transfer you are on. It is the difference between being forced to sell at a loss and being able to buy at a discount. The structural conditions of the economy, wage stagnation, inflation, and high housing costs are unlikely to change. The system is largely built on the assumption of consumer vulnerability. While cash cannot protect against a total system failure like hyperinflation, it is extraordinarily effective against the individual risks most people face: job loss, illness, or market downturns. Every financial decision occurs in one of two contexts. Either you have options or you don't. If you have cash, you can wait and you can walk away. Cash is optionality. It is the leverage that allows you to capture value when it's available and refuse bad deals when they are offered. You cannot change the macroeconomic structure, but you can change how you are positioned within it. The question is whether you want to operate with leverage or without it, because the system will continue either way.